Good evening. This is Edward with sonsofgod.com, and this is Sunday, the 6th of December. Give me just a quick second. We'll adjust our mics. Okay, very good. This will be a short word this evening, but it's something that I don't know that we've touched on enough. I'm certain we haven't really spoken about this enough, but we're going to talk about frequency, your frequency and my frequency, and how to walk in a greater level of immunity in this conflict that we're in. And there's no doubt that the warfare of the kingdom is increasing. We're still catching up to an awareness of it, to the dynamics of it. But that is happening. And there is definitely a warring against the saints of the Most High. If you go into the book of Daniel, it talks about how the enemy seeks to wear down the saints of the Most High. And we've definitely been in a time frame like this, or like that, where the enemy has sought to wear down the saints, because the saints are both in the conflict for the breakthrough of the kingdom, but they're also in the process of being glorified and being changed and going through what has still been a process to come through this transformation that each one has to experience. So, I remember many years ago, this would be maybe 40 years ago, we were doing personal ministry after a Sunday evening service, and people would come up to the platform and they would want some ministry or counsel, whatever. And so often they would come up with ailments, things that were inflicting them, whether it was illnesses, just a number of different things that would really be affecting them. And so they were looking for a healing. They were looking for wisdom on, do I go to the doctor? What do I take? What do I do? And so often the word would come back, bind the transference. Just bind the transference. Because what they were going through and experiencing was transference. It was a warfare that we call transference, taking from one and putting it upon another. And these people would be carrying levels of transference in the warfare. And that warfare would be affecting them in many diverse ways. Very often physical ailments and physical problems. And very rarely would it occur to them that, wait a second, this is not a natural cause. This is something that's being generated by the spirit of the enemy. It's also involving a level of transference from someone that they know that could be affecting them by bringing this oppression over to them. And so the word would come, bind the transference. Well, over the years, there was a deeper understanding that began to unfold, and that really had to do with how you break the transference. You would go back and you could say, well, I break this bond, I break that bond, Not that people understood 30 years ago really what that was all about. I couldn't even say that we did, really, to the degree that we do now, and to the degree that we really needed to. But it would always come back, bind the transference. What you're feeling, what you see, is not real. It's just not real. But to the degree that you accept it, then it has a certain basis of reality for you. And so as time has evolved over the years, a greater understanding came on the realm of transference and how it can be manipulated and redirected toward the sons of God, whether it would be a soul bond that they had with someone, or someone in the church that they knew by acquaintance, or any number of things, but it would always source from someone that had either they were under the oppression, or they had an axe to grind against the one that was, being transferred upon. And so the word would come, okay, break the transference. Break the transference. This is transference. What you think is real is not. And that's a word that has come for a long time. What seems to be real, it is not. It's an illusion. But to the degree that you accept that illusion, it becomes your truth or reality. And so as time began to evolve some more, now maybe it's 10 years ago, maybe 25, 30 years have passed, a greater understanding began to come about our spirits, that we are a spirit, soul, and body, and that we are spiritual beings, and that God has called us to live in the realm of the Spirit. And so the understanding and beginning experiences with your spirit began at that time. And people would begin to have short little experiences with their spirit, which they knew they had, but didn't really have any experience. In many ways, we're a multidimensional creation. There are many aspects to us. We're not just a soul. We're not just a body. But we're a spirit created in the likeness of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And so, as this understanding grew, people began to have experiences with their spirit. Just short, momentary experiences where the veil would be pulled back, the curtain would be pulled back, and you would be aware of your spirit, and you'd be aware of God in you. And it's like, well, the Lord is taking up his abode in us, in me. And the Father is doing that. But it's within our spirit. And then you begin to realize that your spirit is very much a living entity, a living part of you. And in this transition, we're coming out of the realm of the soul and the soul man into the realm of spirit, or the spirit man. Well, this has been an evolving process, because no one can explain to you what I'm going to say or have been saying, and have it really make a lot of sense. Mentally, you can assent to the truth, say, yes, I understand it, but the only way that you understand is through experience. You must experience something firsthand, then you know it. and then you've got it, and the enemy can't take it away. But if you just know it within the scope of your mind, the enemy can take that away. And so it's important that we understand that we have a spirit, soul, and body. God is redeeming the spirit. He is crucifying the soul. And we're transitioning into a spiritual being ourselves in a whole new creation that God is making that we're not really even fully aware of at this point, what we're becoming day by day by day. But it's happening, and the pace is quickening. And so we've grown to become more aware that what we see is not always what is. And we see things, we experience things, and we think that they're real, even to the tune of sickness and illness and things like that. And you get to a point where you feel like you're battling on the physical plane something that has a substantive reality to it, but you're not. You're dealing with a spirit world. You're dealing with a level of transference that goes from one being to another. And that's where we've had to draw the line and say, Lord, you've told us before that what we think is here isn't. What you see and you think is real is not real. And we've had to back up and say, wait a second, I'm not sick. These symptoms are not valid, but they're transference. And the more that you begin to understand that and realize that, the more you have leverage and are able to step away from that, to take dominion over it, to bring it under judgment and step free. And so the next layer in this process of evolving in our understanding is the realization that we are beings made up of frequency and vibration. How does it work that you can transfer something from one person to another? How does that work? What is the conduit? How does that oppression travel from one person to another? What is the conduit? What is the trick here? What don't we understand? Well, we've got to realize, first of all, that we are being birthed and born into the world of spirit, which is entirely different than the world of the physical and the soul. The principles that exist in the spirit are entirely different. In the realm of the soul and physical, you have basic principles that govern that level. Whether it's gravity or any number of things. In the realm of spirit, you have a different set of things that govern the world of spirit. And so one of which, of course, has to do with frequency. That each of us have our own abiding at a certain frequency. It's like your calling card. If you want to call someone, do you know their frequency? Because if you know their frequency, you'll be able to dial into it. And then hopefully they'll be able to pick the phone up on the other end and be able to synchronize with your vibration and their vibration, and voila, you have communication. Well, on the adverse side, you also have the existence of transference. The enemy can take those same principles and use them to transfer over the wire or the cord oppression until you walk away from that experience with an oppression that you didn't have. And then you begin to think, well, it's you, or you're sick, or something. And that's when you back up and say, wait a second, none of this is real. But you have to be able to call it out and identify it to be able to get free from it. Otherwise, there's still a part of you that is accepting it in some measure as having some physical validity when it really doesn't. And so what we need to grasp during this time of the increased conflict that's happening, that the sons of God are being pulled into, is how to step out of the oppression and warfare and walk in a greater level of immunity. And that's much easier said than done, because this involves your frequency, your vibration, where your dwelling place is, because you've got to be able to control that, modulate it, modify it. And that's going to give you a great deal of potential freedom. A classic example is today. We were really in the midst of a great deal of conflict all day because we were being zoned in on. And you say, well, what do I mean? It's just that whether they were physical entities, people that we knew, or spiritual entities in the spirit that are really, set against us and against the manifesting of the kingdom. In either event, these entities were really dialing in on us to such an extent that you could think, well, I'm not feeling well, I've got stomach issues, I've got this, I've got that. When that may be seemingly valid on the physical plane, but it's not real. Only to the degree that we accept it. And so we've had to, like today, step back and say, wait a second, this is not me, this is not valid. But even in the scope of that doesn't really give you a carte blanche to walk away in freedom, because the subconscious mind is still going through a transformation. And the carnal mind, the physical mind might say, you know what, that's exactly right, we reject this is not valid. But the subconscious mind might be struggling with it to really have it make sense. And to that degree, the transference and the oppression continues to flow, because within yourself you're not in agreement. But one thing that we've noticed over the years is that you can get a freedom from the warfare if you understand how to shift your vibration. We all have a vibration. We all have an address. And if the enemy's coming to deliver something at whatever address you are at right now, if you can change your frequency, then you've got a different address, and the oppression, and the battle, and the warfare that's coming against you will drop in a heartbeat, because you won't be at that spiritual frequency or place of vibration in the spirit. That's what we found to help us in the warfare, to get free and to be able to just have some time to drink in. Today, and here again, we've talked about this in the books, but if you can change your frequency, you can change your address, and the enemy cannot reach you. Years ago, just as a small example, years ago in vision, I was in conflict with a satanic being, and I almost had him where I wanted him. I was getting ready to just speak judgment. The sword was drawn, and I was going to take him out. And in a moment, in a flash, just like that, he was gone. I looked and I thought, where did he go? And the Lord showed me he changed his frequency. And when he changed his frequency, he left his abiding on the plane that we were in conflict. We were both on the same plane in this conflict, but the minute he changed his frequency, his vibration, he left that level of reality and went to a different plane. And since I didn't know how to do any of that, that whole episode was over. But it gave me some insight to realize that, these beings can shift their frequency so easily and shift out of being vulnerable. But I tell you, if they can do it, so can we. And we've talked about this, in the books. Some of the ways of changing your frequency or vibration can be, just melting in love before someone, worship, eating something, running, physical activity of sorts, or just worship that just kind of lifts your frequency. Or you can even, put something on the TV for a little bit, and that can shift your awareness or focus on the warfare, and then boom, it's gone because you've shifted frequency. And that's what we happened to do this evening. We had put on something, and it was something that we were looking forward to watching, so we weren't filling space and time, because oftentimes that doesn't really do any good. You've got to really be able to get into it to disconnect. And so we did. We actually got into what we were watching, and before you knew it, the oppression was gone, just like that, because we had shifted in our level of abiding, and it was gone in an instant. And more in this conflict, we're going to have to learn how to modulate our frequency in the warfare so that things don't just pull us down and exhaust us, deplete us, like in the book of Daniel, seeking to wear us out. But we can take small little keys like this and practice them, changing your frequency, changing your vibration, that type of thing, and become more efficient in being able to just drop the conflict as it would be coming at you. And so much of it, like we said, is transference. And our key, we don't have to get on a soapbox and start prophesying against the battle that we're under. We just need to change our address. Very simple. We shift our frequency, the battle breaks, and then if you want to come back to it later and speak a word of judgment, then as the Lord leads. Anyway, that's about it for the word this evening. A very short word, but something to just be studying. The changing and manipulating of your frequency to be able to maintain a level of freedom and immunity in the increased warfare that is coming. And then to have subsequently a greater leverage and ability to judge the enemy. That's it for this evening. We send our blessings. Amen.